Hi there, welcome to our final video in my series about teaching vocabulary to second language learners. So this last video is going to highlight Boom Learning. So this program basically uses digital flashcards, and for the most part, I would use this program with younger students, like primary students or early junior. Uh, but that's just because of the design style of many of the card decks. Um, that being said, depending on they how they were designed by the individual author, they might be more suitable for older students. And I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. So first, in order to have your students use this program, you need to sign up for an account. The free account is very limited. You can only have 5 students. Now, I did use this where a whole class acted as one student so that they could get some practice, but I couldn't get any usable assessment data from that. The next step up in the accounts is much more suitable because for actual classes because you're allowed to have 50 students, and I believe you can create up to 5 classes. So with this, you can actually see how individual students are doing, um, and you can see how individual students are doing. So I will show you. So in order to get to the website, you go to wow.boomlearning.com. You can also Google Boom Learning or Boom Cards, and it'll pull up. So first, I'll show you for teachers. So to sign in, sign in. So you can create an account, uh, or I already have an account. I will sign in with Google. Okay, and it allows me, so this is kind of my dashboard. So I'll go to my classes, and I have already my 2 classes with actual students in them, the students that I am currently teaching. So let's say I want to create a new class. Oops, new classroom down here at the bottom. And I'm going to call it class. Now I can make a password for it, and whoops, the name class was already taken. So class for video. Okay. So from there I can add students, and I can actually add multiple students at once, which is super helpful. I'm going to add 1 student. It will be Freya, who is my dog. And when you add multiple students, you can give them the same generic password, which they can then change. And you'll always have access to the password. So I'll show you that in just a minute. So her password will be dog because she's a dog. Okay, so now we see my her nickname, and then here is her username. Now, I have found it easier to change the usernames of my students. So let's see if I can, okay, so I've changed her username to just her name. And now if I click on this little plus, I can see a bunch of different things. So I can see the report if she had completed any decks of cards, how she was doing, her password. So if I need to reset her password, I can assign different decks. I can move her to a different classroom, or I can delete her. Okay. You can also, if you have multiple students, you can assign decks to the whole class or 1 by 1 individually. So if I want to assign her decks, now I already have lots of decks that I have bought. So you can get them from Teachers Pay Teachers or in the store, and I will show you how to access that in just a minute. Some of them are free and some of them you have to pay for. So let's say I want her to learn about, we'll do some sight words. So she will have just 1 activity in her on her dashboard. Now it does look quite different when your student logs in, so I will show you that in just a couple minutes. But if I want to, whoops, go away. Okay, so if I want to look at my library, it'll show me all of the different cards that I've got, and I can put them in different folders just to help me find them later on. I can look at the reports, so of my different classes, of which folder the deck that they've been in, and which deck that they have played. Okay, and I can go to the store, so I can search for decks that are in French, and I can look for ones that, oh, sorry, my dog is whining, that cost something, okay, and I can search actually by price. So if I don't want to pay for anything, I can look at these free decks and do those ones. Okay, I can also create decks. Oops. Okay, so I can make decks, I can add sounds. I have not made any, to be honest. The ones that I have found are quite good, and I just don't necessarily have the time or energy to create a whole new thing. Okay, but I can create buttons, I can add multiple choice things, I can have fill in the blanks, I can have sound, which is super helpful. Okay, so these are kind of the different activities. Now, I want to show you what it looks like for a student view because I think that is really important. So I'm going to sign out and I'm going to go to student sign in. Okay, so Freya and her password was dog. Okay, and this is what she will see. So she will only see what I have assigned to her. So if we click on that, so here's the deck. Now for this deck, unfortunately you won't be able to hear the audio coming from the computer, but I'll click on the sound. Okay, so it said soleil, and then I need to find the word in the bottom and drag it over. Okay, so the next word is école. I'll drag it over. Violette, I'll drag it over. Lettre. Okay, and I'll drag that one over. I'll submit. I can also star a card to find it again later. Okay, and I've gotten them all right. If I get them wrong, ton, okay, so that one is correct. D'un, so it said d'un, but if I choose vin instead, I'll show you what happens. So if I got it right, it shows up. If I got it wrong, it will disappear. And the two that I didn't answer are kind of circled in a different color. Okay, so that one was d'un, ma, I'll drag it over, and moi. Okay, and then I can submit that. If I want to leave, I can do that. Now there are some other, oh, and see, it will show me how, if I've completed the deck, how many cards I've completed. And then these little gems are how many I completed correctly. So if I go back actually to my account, I want to show you another one that I have on there. So I will, oops, sign in with Google. So the decks, you can make them really whatever you would like. The ones that I have, of course, are, they were created by other people, les mots fréquents, and let's see. So I have a number of them. I have audio and word match, so that's kind of what we already did. And there's also build the word. So for these build the word ones, I'm going to listen. Okay, it said ami, and then I need to spell it. So I've used this with younger students just to help with some basic sight words and to kind of get them to start reading. I find it is much simpler than some of the other activities. Also, as you can see with the animations, it's a little bit more bébé, a lot of them. So the older students don't necessarily buy into that quite so much. But when you're creating your own, or if you're searching for decks for older students, you can definitely find ones that the animations aren't quite as childish looking. That being said, my kids that I have right now are in grade 2 and grade 3, and they don't mind this at all. Okay, so Emmy, and it's correct. Okay, so after your students have completed some decks, we can then actually, we'll do this an easier way. So we can see reports as a whole class, or you can go to individual reports. So I'm going to do that just to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, so if I click on reports for my, if you have less decks, it's a bit easier to find each individual report. I didn't remember which folder my deck was in, so that made it a bit more challenging. Okay, so if I take a look, I can see that this is what she has worked on. So she has got 1 correct, 1 incorrect out of 5 cards, and has only spent 51 minutes playing. Okay, and then if I click on there, I can see that this card, this is where everything was dragged and that it was correct. If I click on this one, it shows me that these ones were incorrect. Okay, so down was brought over, it was wrong, and that these were incorrectly answered. It also shows the time it took to answer these questions. So that can be helpful because if your students are spending quite a bit of time answering the questions, you know that they're either having a difficulty with the question or maybe focusing. If they're answering very quickly, then you know that they're really knowing their stuff. Okay, so then if I wanted to see kind of how my whole class is doing overall, so if I found a deck that some of them had completed, most of my students have not completed this, but I can see that one student has worked on this. He's gotten 89% correct, and if I, that's not what I wanted. If I click on his actual results, then I can see which ones he got wrong, how long it took him to answer that. But I can kind of see overall how they were doing and how long it took them to complete. So a good thing about this program is that it can easily be used as a center with headphones or an activity for early finishers. And it can be assigned for homework. I know that my kids right now are super keen and they have done it at home without even being asked, which is super fun. But there are a few downsides to this program. So the free membership, like I said, is very limited. You can own as many decks as you want, but you can only have 5 students. And if I remember correctly, you cannot create any decks. You might be able to create a couple, but it's very limited. Another issue that I have found is that when you buy a deck, it's already made and you can't customize it at all. So, for example, I had bought a Christmas deck that came with a bunch of other decks, but it had some more religious items than I would have liked, as opposed to some more kind of secular Christmas items, and I couldn't remove them. So, my students were learning about things that weren't necessarily appropriate in a public school setting. But I think that's kind of a small drawback to what it is. I think this program is super fun for a lot of kids. It's engaging, and they're working on building up sight words. You can use it for building up content knowledge. So I've got science decks that the kids are really interested in. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch through comments on my blog. I hope you have an excellent day. And that's it. This is the last of the series.